I want to get into Dan Bongino and this Operation Obamagate. This is something else, because Dan, who I used to work with at Fox and is a really good guy, and basically, gave up a whole lot of money and his show to go over and work at the FBI. I give him a ton of credit for doing that. He warned maybe about 6 or 8 weeks ago that there was going to be a lot coming. And a lot of people, I get it, you're frustrated, you're like, why hasn't it all happened right now? But I would say he's a man of his word, and I trust him. I personally trust him. And he said something that I want to play you. It's relevant right now with Letitia James, of course, under fire. The judges, the whole court, throwing out the $500 million penalty against Donald Trump, saying it was a violation of the 8th Amendment because you can't have such excessive fines, right? Just look at the Constitution. Meanwhile, Bolton, of course, as you know, had his home raided, and that was really something. I mean, he faces up to 20 years actually in prison as a result of this. But Dan alluded to all of this just a few weeks ago. Let's watch the clip.
Let me ask you about, are you going to be looking into, Cash and Pam, any potential collusion between the DOJ, Letitia James, the novel legal theory of Alvin Bragg, or Nathan Wade or Fani Willis and the DOJ? Is that something? Has anything come up? Is there any way to determine whether or not evidence was destroyed in any of these cases?
Well, there's always a way to determine that. I don't want to comment on that specific case right now for a reason. I don't want to get ahead of the Department of Justice on that. But I want to say this. The FBI obviously has the public corruption portfolio. And yes, if you are a corrupt politician out there, if you are engaged in behavior, you know what you're doing, we're going to find you. I promise. No one is going to get off. The days of selecting and putting your partisan bias on and taking care of your friends, those days are over. You know what, Sean? I don't have any friends. I don't want any friends. Well, maybe outside of you and a couple of. I don't care. I didn't come here for the money. I didn't come here to make. I know.
No, you didn't go there for the money. I can tell people that for sure. No, I didn't come here to make friends. I don't give a damn about friends. I don't have any friends. I don't want any friends. I got my wife. I got you, and I got a small crew of people. So I don't need any friends. If you want a friend in D.C., get a dog.
We're coming for you.
That'll help.
Yeah, exactly. You want a friend in D.C., right? Go get a Labradoodle like I have, because there are no friends in D.C. You've been doing this, 30 years? There are no friends here.
It's relevant only because in some ways, I don't know if Bolton was his friend, but we all worked with Bolton. I actually had a lot of arguments on the air with Bolton. It was kind of a regular thing. I don't think we did see eye to eye on much, but Bolton was somebody who came in and was running the NSC for Donald Trump and published a lot of what the president considered classified information. And basically, it got pretty heated. Like within the administration, they said, you can't publish this stuff. Donald Trump was pretty darn furious because he felt that it was compromising sources, et cetera. And he published it anyway. It turned out to be kind of a lousy book. Even the New York Times panned it. They said it was like 500 pages of Bolton's notes, which kind of seemed unhinged at times. And they were like, gosh, he's such a warmonger. Like he was excited one night because he thought that they were going to bomb someplace in the Middle East. And then he realized they weren't going to do it because Donald Trump said, no, there were going to be too many deaths. He didn't want 150 body bags. It's too many. And I'll tell you this from personal experience, having talked to him repeatedly about what was going on in the Middle East, as well as Venezuela, et cetera. He is very much an anti-war president. He does not want anybody dying, like anybody on any side. Like he really doesn't, whereas Bolton's like, okay, we go in strong. And so there was this clash between the two of them. And then he publishes this book with the allegedly classified information. The judge wound up saying, oh, you can go ahead and do it. So he did. And now this is coming back to bite him because, as Jonathan Turley pointed out, legal scholar, he said he could face 20 years as a result of this. Listen.
Is intriguing here because these are long-standing allegations that the book indicated or referenced classified material that he may have acquired when he was in the administration. We're not clear as to what that is, but it would suggest that it could be national defense information. The reason that's important is that creates a heightened potential penalty. So you can have penalties that range from 5 to 20 years. 20 years tends to be the sentences for concealing information, obstructing justice. Simply having classified information can weigh in at about 10 years. And there are often multiple counts because each of those documents can be charged separately.
You know, so it's really interesting how this administration is actually using some of the cases that they tried to use against Donald Trump, right? Whether it be mortgage fraud, whether it be classified documents. Letitia getting hit with a big blow last week. I mean, major news, that $500 million penalty being tossed. She'll likely appeal it, of course, because, you know, this is what she does. But I'll tell you, this was egg on her face, and the media has started to turn against her. We saw it, I reported on this a couple of months ago with New York Magazine tending to be very liberal, and they're kind of saying, look, this is a mess of her own doing. You've seen MSNBC start to shift. You've seen CNN start to shift. Let me show you the clip.
Well, I'm not Wolf. I have been skeptical of the Attorney General's case for a long time. I'm on record saying that this is a huge win for Donald Trump any way you cut it, and this is a stinging rebuke to the Attorney General, Letitia James. The finding here, it's a very long, complicated ruling, but the bottom line is, while the finding of liability against Donald Trump can stand, for now at least, the damages award, which started at $350 million with interest, gets up close to $500 million, that is thrown out. And the core reason for that ruling, according to the judges, is essentially that there was not enough of a showing here that there were actual victims. And just to refresh people's memories, this is the civil fraud lawsuit brought by the Attorney General. The core allegation is that Donald Trump habitually overvalued his own assets when he was trying to get bank loans from banks and other lenders. And essentially, the argument that Donald Trump made below that has now had resonance in the appeals court is, you're talking about very sophisticated, quote unquote, victims. These are billion-dollar banks that made the loans, got repaid on the loans by Donald Trump with interest, and actually profited to the tune of millions of dollars. So it's not the typical type of fraud case where you have somebody stealing money from other people or ripping off unknowing consumers. So this ruling by the appeals court is monumental. It was also very unusual in that it took them nearly a year to reach this decision. As Caitlin Polance just said, the next step is going to be to go up to the highest court in the state, the Court of Appeals in New York State.
You know, it is amazing that it took this long. I mean, over 300 days. It should have only taken like 30. That's what's typical. So why did it take so long? A lot of people were speculating that Kathy Hochul had something to do with this. This came out of a Miranda Devine column that was in the New York Post. Allegedly, people at the White House were telling her that Kathy had told the president, listen, you got to stop meddling with my fines, in Midtown Manhattan. And once you stop doing that, then I'll allow them to move forward on this case. Yeah, it's strange. I'm just going to tell you, it's really weird that it took this long. It just shouldn't have taken this long. And when you listen to the testimony, I mean, the judges, you knew which way they were going, right?
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office. All of the defendants repeatedly violated... Ms.
Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners, where the supposed victim had the ability and legal obligation to discover the allegedly misrepresented matters by conducting its own due diligence, where the supposed wrongdoer advised the supposed victim through written disclaimers to conduct its own due diligence and to draw its own conclusions, where the alleged misrepresentation almost entirely concerned inherently subjective valuations of properties and businesses.
Yes.
And where the victim never complained about any fraud in the transactional losses from it. Because I've gone through the cases which you've cited, and all of them always involved the consumer protection aspect. It involved protection of the market.
Well, several responses.
And I want to add to his question, and little to no impact on the public marketplace.
Wow. Well, I guess she learned the hard way. Letitia did anyway, that the Eighth Amendment is for real. Excessive fines prevents the government from imposing disproportionately large monetary policies. In other words, she couldn't do what she was trying to do, which was to bankrupt him and literally take his property. She wanted to go right into Trump Tower and take it over. That was her goal for political reasons only.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud. New York Attorney General Leticia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. The whole thing was crazy. By the way, Justin M., I agree with you. Everything is taking so freaking long. The auto pen thing, we haven't even talked about that recently, like what was going on. Look, these things take time. I think it's important to be somewhat patient. I do think it's important to give some benefit of the doubt. I think the good news is the Democrats are on defense. If you think about the last time that Donald Trump was in there, he was on defense. Right now, it's a very different scenario. And so that's the good news. All of this, however, does take time. That's the reality of it. And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that this is a different time around, okay? And they've had 4 years on the sidelines, and they spent a lot of time. Stephen Miller, 4 years running America Legal First, right? All he did was focus on this stuff. And so when you think about how they're going in and taking over DC from a crime perspective, trying to put the National Guard in there, this is all because they've realized, okay, we have the legal power to be able to do these things. When you think about what they did in California as those protests were going on, again, they won that one in the Ninth Circuit. They've thought this all through. And so I get it. It's frustrating. It's taking time. But the important thing is things are moving. So I'm not discouraged yet. I want everything yesterday too. But speaking of Letitia, look what's going on with Letitia. There's a number of things. They've got 2 investigations going on. One is whether or not, it was clear the court already decided, violation of 8th Amendment, but what about Donald Trump's civil rights? In other words, were his civil rights violated? This is the latest and greatest. I'll let Fox do the recap here. But basically, and I think this is the right, I want to make sure I have the right soundbite for you. I think this is the right one where they're talking about how they're looking into whether or not his civil rights as an individual were violated by one Letitia James.
What do you know, David?
Well, hi, Dana. 2 well-placed sources familiar with the probe tell Fox News that New York Attorney General Letitia James and her office is under investigation by the DOJ here in Washington. We're told that Attorney General Pam Bondi signed off on the probe. Subpoenas were sent to James's office, and there is a grand jury investigation underway in the New York State capital of Albany. The specific investigation, my colleague Jake Gibson, Ashley Oliver, and myself are being told involves deprivation of rights, which in plain language means someone in a position of legal authority violating someone else's constitutional or legal rights. Those sources tell Fox News the DOJ is going after James because she took then former President Donald Trump to court, quote, simply because she didn't like him and campaigned on getting him. DOJ, led by Bondi, believes she violated his First Amendment rights dealing with free speech. James has said before she believed Trump inflated his net worth to get good deals on loans from lenders and other financial benefits. Ms. James won in a court judgment of over $450 million against the Trump Organization. Trump is appealing, and it's pending. The entire scope of the grand jury probe in Albany, Dana, is unclear. Grand juries are secretive, but we've learned from these well-placed sources it stems from a recent strike force set up inside the Justice Department to investigate an alleged plot to tie Trump to Russia in 2016. Sources say that strike force has expanded to other topics. Now, to recap, the Justice Department has initiated grand jury proceedings in Albany, New York, against the Empire State Attorney General Letitia James. But remember, this is important. A grand jury simply decides if there's enough evidence to indict. To be clear, we are told this is very early in the process, and no one, as I speak to you right now, is facing any charges at this time. Fox News reached out to Attorney General James's office multiple times, but we've yet to hear back. Dana?
All right, David.
But I think that she's still at serious risk for an indictment. They just announced, right, the DOJ investigation out of New York. And that comes on the heels of the mortgage fraud investigation. Again, interesting that he's going after people with the exact same things. This one's different, frankly. It's different. But this is a big deal. She's actually facing some real challenges.